podcast, I interview the first female guest in the long, storied history of the Building Men podcast. My inspiration, my partner in crime, my girlfriend, Julie Verona. We discuss her career as a labor and delivery nurse and how she's had such an amazing insight into relationship dynamics in her entire career. We talk about verbal, paraverbal, and nonverbal communication, how Julie was the inspiration for so many of the podcast episodes during the last year. There have been a handful of individuals during the past year of my life that have had a significant impact on my mindset, my confidence, and the way that I show up in all aspects. At the top of that list is Julie Verona. I am not quite sure what I would have done without this unbelievable woman in my life. Thank you for everything, Julie. Love you. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome to the Building Men podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Meralda. Welcome to the Building Men podcast, helping you become the strongest version of yourself mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. So I have a guest today, a very special guest. You're not a man. You are not a man. This is my first female guest in the history of the Building Men podcast. So I wanted to introduce the audience to Julie Verona. Julie is a labor and delivery nurse. She is basically you're a relationship counselor and she's also my girlfriend, my partner. Julie, welcome to the Building Men podcast.
Hi, I'm honored to be here, for real. This is a really special invitation, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. You look gorgeous today.
Yeah?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you're not looking so bad. You're with the hula girl shirt.
So you bought me this shirt. So there's a hula girl. I didn't know if I should do the button or button down one more button. I wasn't sure. It's like that weird spot. If I go one more button down, it's a lot of chest lettuce. It's a lot. I'm going to stick with the button. Maybe, we'll see how this goes.
I feel pretty special because there's only a certain lucky few that have been in your podcast with you with the button down.
I think it's 3 people. I think it's Norman Kinsey, it's Ian Lobos, and you. I think that's it. I think everybody else has gotten a t-shirt. So
I'm proud to be in that club.
It's pretty fancy. So my first question would be, do you want to go on a date this weekend at some point? Would you like to go on a date with me?
I would love to go on a date.
All right. I'll plan something.
I'll go anywhere with you. Do that.
All right. So we'll start off with a really important question right off the bat. How can you tell if a pineapple is ripe when you're in the grocery store?
We pretend that it's your head.
Because my head looks like a pineapple.
We're pulling out a leaf from the very center part of your head.
Okay.
And if it comes out easily, then it's ripe. But if you get any kind of resistance, then you put it down. Unless you don't want to eat it in a couple days. But then I don't know what the time frame is for it to become easily pullable. So I would just put it down and pick a ripe one. Yeah, so you pull the leaf out of the center.
Okay.
And if it's smell it and you rub it in your armpit.
So when I've seen you in the grocery store smelling the pineapple, why do you do that?
I don't know, just because I want other people to do it. I want other people to think that that's what you're supposed to do.
It's a social experiment.
Yeah. But in all reality, as far as I know, that's how you tell how a pineapple is ripe. Okay. I could be wrong, but it's been working so far. So
okay.
I'm gonna
so far, so good. So
yeah.
We'll stick with it. So we'll start with the labor and delivery nurse thing. It's really interesting. Your profession, you deal in a really intimate setting. We talked about it before. You have basically people come into the hospital as a solo person going into the hospital to have a child, but you wind up taking care of at least two people every single time someone goes in to have a baby. So you're charged with, not only the one patient that you have, the mother who's expecting, but also the baby or babies if it's multiple births, right? Mm-hmm. So it's such a fascinating thing. You get to see life.
It is pretty
born every single day that you go to work. It's really an amazing thing. So I'll take it in a way where you see real couples going through a really, not traumatic, but you see them going through one of the biggest moments in life. So start there. Talk to us a little bit about your journey and what you've noticed about couples in that really intimate moment as husbands and wives or partners or whoever are expecting children together.
Oh.
Deep question.
Yeah, that is a good question. I mean, and it's something I talk about. My work obviously it's like a hugely intimate event that goes on in your life. Anyone who's had a baby knows that it's intimate on many, many levels. And honestly, how long have I been doing this? I don't know, 20 some years. And every delivery, I'm like, how the hell did that just happen? How the hell did that human just like come out? All of a sudden, there were 2 people here and now there's 3. And so, yeah, it's one of the coolest things still, which is one of the reasons I love my job, really. Not a lot of people can say that. But as far as couples go and relationships, it's been fascinating, right? Because you're forced into this setting as a couple that you have, especially first time parents are forced into this setting that they have no idea what is going to happen in this room between the 2. And as anyone, again, who's a parent, that things don't happen sometimes how you expect them to. You can come in with your like birth plan and this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And anyone that walks in there, quite frankly, we're just like, you know what, out the window.
Right.
You're going to end up with a C-section because you're just, and it's the truth. So you come in with these expectations and it doesn't always work out that way. So the couples are forced to work together, and really it's like the Amazing Race, right? You're forced to deal with all of these potential issues. And so to see the dynamic between the couples is fascinating to me. Like I can, after all these years, I can pick out who, has a healthy relationship, who doesn't, who might be in an abusive relationship, who's not, and so it's that social experiment part of it, if you will, has been amazing for me. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things.
Right. And I'm sure you can probably pick out couples that they communicate really well together based on that event, because it's one of those crazy situations where you can go in with a plan. Mike Tyson said it. You have a plan going into the ring until you get punched in the face. You get punched in the nose, then the plan goes to shit. It goes out the window. So people can come in with that plan, and then they have to downshift and work together and realize, listen, life is not going to be rainbows and unicorns. There's going to be some crazy shit that happens.
And maybe that's why it is the way it is. Maybe it's just like a big giant smack in the face. Like, this is what you're in for, like, as a couple. And, you have dads that are like sitting in the corner, like terrified, and I'm like, all right, come hold her hand or do this or do that. They're like, I could put them in probably categories. Like there's like the clueless dads, like the little lost puppies that are just like, they're terrified. And I'm like, come on now, little Kevin. All right, this is what you're supposed to do. Hold a leg, hold a hand, get her, put a washcloth on her forehead, and then you have the partners that are just like totally passed out and like asleep, and they're just like on their phones and completely uninvolved and disengaged. And the mom is like so stoic and terrified. And, then you have the partners that are like overly attentive, and the moms are like, oh my God, leave me alone. You're breathing on me or whatever, like your breath smells. But they mean well, right? Like they want to participate. And and every now and then you get a couple that's like they are well matched. They communicate well, and that's really cool to see. But everything else in between too, there's all sorts of stuff.
So when you see that one couple, that diamond in the rough couple, and we've talked about it so many times, you'll come home or we'll see each other and you'll say, I don't believe what I just witnessed. This couple really connected in such a deep level. I had the best birth today. It was so amazing, and it really inspires you based on what you see. So what is it that makes a couple communicate in that way? What can you pick out any little things that you see that you're like, you know what, they got it going on. They are the diamond in the rough. They have their shit together. They can communicate in this way during this crazy event that I know this couple's going to be they're going to be A-okay moving forward.
That's a good question. should have like written stuff down about this along the way. It's verbal communication and nonverbal communication. It's like kind of being able to read each other and knowing when like, ooh, like, maybe this is what she needs or he needs, like I've seen so many moms read the dad. I have specifically a couple I'm thinking of right now. They were both police officers, and the husband or partner or whatever, he was this like big giant strapping guy, a police officer. He's exactly what you would imagine to be a police officer, a Philly cop to look like, right? And the wife, it was a really difficult delivery. It was a very traumatic delivery. And there she is in the middle of like delivering this baby in this really difficult situation. And it was their first baby, and he was horrified. Like he was like, what is happening? And I could feel him, I could feel that angst. And she obviously could too. So she's in the middle of this and she looks up at him and she's like, okay, and I'm like, how amazing is that? Like here she is. Like we may have to do an emergency C-section with the baby halfway out, and she's worried about him, and he was like embarrassed. Like he was like, I'm fine, like I'm fine. But she, was able to like shelf herself in that moment, which, that's a really, I don't know, that is a good quality that you see in a healthy relationship.
Right.
You're looking out for each other. Not only are you kind of reading each other, you're just aware. You're like a unit. They're like units. They just kind of like work together like a well-oiled machine. There's no awkwardness, and you're not offended. Neither one of them are offended at something. There's just this harmony, I guess, maybe you feel.
We've talked so much, Julie, about communication as we're communicating. That's been one of the topics that we talked about probably more than any other topic. We talk about the communication, the words that we're speaking, the meaning of those words. We talk about the way that we say the words we say, and then we talk about the nonverbal communication. And I'd like to switch gears just slightly and talk a little bit about communication. I had a guest on yesterday, Mark England, who is a linguistic expert, and his thoughts are around the power of the words that we say. And we've been talking about it recently, and I would tell you, call me on it when I use passive language, when I say, I don't know, or I guess, or maybe, or perhaps, or we'll see. What do you want to do? Like, where I'm giving away any level of ownership over the words that I'm using. So I'm curious as to what you think as far as when you think about communication, how much of the communication is the words that we're saying? How much of the communication is the way that we're saying those words? And then how much of it is our nonverbal communication? Because we've talked so much about the power of nonverbal communication. Even if the words say, I would love to help you, the way that we're saying it and what we're doing when we're saying it, it's so different, the way that it can be communicated. So how would you break down communication if you were to throw out a percentage wise for each of those?
That's a really tough one. And I know that there's a right answer.
There's not. And what the thing was when I went on this podcast yesterday.
Facts. I feel like I'm going to need
it made me rethink everything. So I did a deep dive into the actual research behind it. The research was done by a professor of psychology at University of California. The study was published in the 60s. The guy's name was Albert Moravian. And I did a deep dive into it. And basically he only studied women. It was only based on women. And I had no idea. And I'm quoting the study like it was done 45 years ago, 50 years ago. The study, even longer than that, and it was done with a small subset of the population, women in California. That's all he did. And so I want to rethink my definition of it. How much of it is the words, the way we say those words, and then the nonverbal communications. There's not a right answer. It's definitely, you don't have to take the test on this afterwards.
God. I bet different people would answer that question differently, right? In your own experiences. In my opinion, I think that the nonverbal communication is heavier than the verbal communication. We could have a conversation non-verbally right now, and So I feel like,
listen, the listeners can't hear what you just said to me non-verbally. This is a show because kids might be listening.
They can.
Listen, okay. Thank God no one can hear what we just said non-verbally right there. Whew.
Take that clip out. But nonverbal communication.
Are your armpits sweating?
Meanwhile, I said nothing. Meanwhile, I said nothing to you non-verbally. But that was fun. Yeah, so I think that nonverbal, I think that was weighted the heaviest. And then there's verbal, and the paraverbal is what? Is the tone?
Yeah, it's kind of like how you say what you say, the tone, how loud it is, the cadence that you speak. So, you can speak in a really drawn out way, or you can speak in a really like frenetic way like that. So it's the tone, the volume, and the cadence of the words.
That may be weighted the heaviest, the paraverbal. And then the nonverbal, and then the verbal. Percentage-wise, I think, let's say maybe verbal is 30%, and the paraverbal is 40. Where am I? 70?
You're at 70.
So, well, then that would be the verbal the most. It's paraverbal, nonverbal, verbal.
Okay. Perfect. So we can go like 45, 35, 30, 20.
Yeah.
Who knew we were going to be doing math during this?
God.
Definitely didn't think that was going to be the case. Like I said, I don't know. I had no script. I just wanted to talk to you about communication because it's something I'm really interested in.
No, that's a great question. And I think that the whole nonverbal communication situation is a huge reason why there's such a miscommunication and why communication in general is such a problem within couples, because there's so many people, I think, out there in general that don't respect the nonverbal. They don't know how powerful their nonverbal and paraverbal communication can be. They completely disregard it, and they're focused on the verb, on the words only, which obviously can pack a punch, as we know, and are powerful. But if you're not accountable for your nonverbals and your paraverbals, it's easy. It's like a cop-out to be like, well, that's not what I said.
Right.
But you're saying that to me with your nonverbal and your paraverbal. So yes, you did say that, but you could argue that they didn't. So then, boom. It's an explosion. That was my explosion. That
was your explosion. That'll be the clip that I pull for Instagram right there.
Yay.
What does that nonverbal communication mean again? What does that mean? What is that again?
It's an explosion of like miscommunication.
Perfect. You need to trademark that.
It's from Friends, actually. Jennifer Aniston did that. I can't steal it.
You can't steal that, right? We just gave her credit.
Yeah. I think that's a huge the lack of respect for the paraverbal and the nonverbal. And to hear when you first brought that up, it was mind blowing to me. I was like, I've been saying that all along, and I'm not crazy. You're
not crazy. We talked about that on our first date.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll segue into the origin story, the Dennis and Julie origin story. So I was waiting for you at the landing in New Hope, and you were driving up from Delaware to meet me out on a date. And that's when you listened to my podcast for the first time. You actually thought about, you're like, I don't know if I want to see this guy. I might cancel the date. Why did you go through with it to meet this
I was at the beach. It was my birthday, and you've been to the beach. It's a lot. It's like, it's sun, it's fun. It's like as much fun and everything. My parents are, the best hosts, and it's always a good time. So it's a lot of everything. It's a lot of sun and fun and crabs and, lots of good stuff. And so I was tired. I'm driving home. I was like, I got to drive home, and then I got to shower and go on a date. And, I'm just over any kind of dating because I'm cold and dead inside. And, I'm just going to go get in my pajamas and have a glass of wine. And I was contemplating that. And then on the way home, I have a 3-hour drive. So I was like, I guess I should listen to this podcast, because if I go on the date, I should like have listened to the podcast that you've talked about, that we had talked about. I don't want to go in, I wanted to be a proper date and have some information about you, since you had offered it. So yeah, on the way home, I listened to every single episode of Building Men in regards to like the pillars of masculinity. It was, accountability, purpose, resilience, all of those. And it resonated with me a lot. And so I was inspired, because I'm raising essentially 2 sons, and, have struggled with like ideas of masculinity in my life. So it really resonated with me. And I'm like, where was this? Like when my son was born, who's 18 on Sunday. So, right. It's like, so anyway, it resonated with me. And I was literally was crying in the car, because it was that impactful. It was information that I wish that I had, and had I had it, would have made a difference in some, ways that I not raised him, but in some ways, in different situations that I had to handle as a mom, I wish that I had that information then. So,
what a great pickup line. Listen to my podcast.
Right.
I'm so cheesy. I am so cheesy.
To that point, no, you weren't. You were just talking. Yeah, no. If you had done that, I would have been like, yeah, check, please. No, I was inspired by you. You know that. I was inspired by your story. It takes balls to do what you did. And I think that leaving the job that you did, and realizing that you were not happy in your marriage, and that, you could be a better version of yourself when you like cut off some of dead weight. Like it takes a lot of courage to do that. I mean, that's what I did. So that's what related me to you. Your podcast was just an extraneous thing that you had talked about that I was like, I should check it out.
Yeah.
So, but what I was going to say is, your target audience is Building Men, and is, fathers and those people, but they're also the single moms out there that are raising these sons, or women in relationships with, partners that aren't the best, male role models in some ways. So.
Yeah. And we met out, and I went in a little bit before you, ordered you a drink. And when you came in, the white pants, they were working. White pants were working for you. And it was before Labor Day, so it was totally legal, right? You're allowed to do that.
It's definitely still on yes, it was definitely legal. It was Memorial. It was the last day. It was like the last
right
day
before Labor Day. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. See the podcast with my father for further clarification on white pants and white blazers, when you're allowed to wear those items.
Julie Verona is a big, and apparently Dennis
George Moralda, the same thing. Who knew?
Moralda's, yeah.
So we have our first date. We go on another one, and we went on a first like experience together, where we went away somewhere together. We went on this. We went hiking. We stayed in this shitty little cabin that I don't even know what you can call it, but it was an experience. So we went. It was like a relationship overdrive. We're like, all right, let's see if this is gonna work or not. And we had the best time. And something that just stuck out to me was there was never a time where anything ever felt forced with you. It never felt that I needed to be someone who I wasn't. It just always felt right. It immediately felt like home with you. And I still remember we just had such a great experience. We went on this 8-mile hike. We were doing And I'm nuts. I don't know. You didn't think I was so crazy. I was in that like crazy push-up mode at the time, and I was like, I need to do 400 push-ups on this hike, and we had to stop and do 50 push-ups every mile or some shit like that, right?
Yeah, I was like, oh god, with the push-ups.
Enough with the push-ups.
Here we go again with the berries and push-ups and before 11. No, I think that should be a relationship test, right? We should put every couple should do that date, because it would immediately weed out anyone you wouldn't want to be with, right? Like that could have gone in any, like there are so many women friends that I've told about that date that are like, you stayed where? Right. And I was like, it was like serial killers. It was like,
absolutely.
This, like hole in the wall. Yeah, there, and you could immediately tell about somebody. Do I want to be with? We were like,
bring it on.
Met, like my person, like, oh my god! Not only this is terrifying and dirty, and there's nobody here. Do we have a reservation? I don't know. There's like cobwebs and
the door didn't lock.
Nothing was right. Like nothing was safe.
Yeah, it was all right. And everything was right at the same time.
We were like, this is so fun.
So we go into, just to set up for the audience, we go on this 8-mile hike in Ricketts Glen. It was beautiful. Waterfalls everywhere. It was really a special hike that we went on. And then we found an underground bar, pretty much. Underground, like a speakeasy bar. At the time, nothing was open. You were not allowed to go into a bar. I won't say the name of the place because I don't want them to get in trouble right now, because they were just gracious. We go to one place and we said, we want to watch football. Is there football on right now? That we went on a Sunday. And they're like, well, you can't watch it here. And they, just the accents that they had, it was really funny. You can't do that here. You crazy?
Sit at a bar?
You want to sit at a bar? You crazy?
Sit at a bar? It's COVID.
So they sent us to this place, and we walk. First, it says there's a sign on the door. It says no cell phones allowed, and we're looking at each other like, what the fuck is this? No cell phones allowed. Well, we go in, and it's a legit bar. And we opened the door, and there was these old grizzly guys sitting around the bar.
It was heaven.
It was heaven. Drinking beer, sports are on. It was just amazing. So now we're like, okay, we have a second date in this experience. We go hiking. We sit at this bar and we're just bullshitting with people watching football, and it was amazing.
I was the only one in my team shirt. I need to point that out, right?
Who's your team again?
The Eagles.
The Eagles. How did that work out? So I'm a Giants fan and you're an Eagles fan.
There was so many football fans there, and guess who was the only one?
Yeah, you were the only one. That's right. And the guys were sounding like they just gargled with like glass and gravel. They had this raspy voices around the bar. It was really, really cool. So we leave there and we go back to the cabins, and it was a rustic. Was that the word that we heard? It was a rustic cabin. Yeah, rustic chic.
People at the bar, and we're like, "Have you heard of whatever these cabins?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, we heard of those. You know what? Here's my number. We have a house on the lake. You're welcome to stay there.
Just in case."
Because, yeah. And we were like, what does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, there was like a sign on the door, like, we haven't had a murder here in 17 days. And then we get there and they take the sign off, like, oh, we're screwed. We had one last night. No, but we get there.
Nobody there. There's nobody there. I was like, oh, and then
no one was there.
I'm like, I booked the reservation, and I was like, oh man. We are going to just circle the drain here right now. So whatever. I was
Listen, it was great. Well, I knew this guy for a couple weeks. No big deal. No skin off my ass right now. No, but we get there. No one is there. We're trying to find someone to check into our little cottage, our cozy cottage. You pick up the phone inside the place. It was like
pick up their phone
and call them. And
in your office.
We're in there's stuff for sale in there. It was a flea market auction, an inside flea market auction. I have a picture of you laying on a table that has Playboy magazines spread out, like every Playboy in the history of Hugh Hefner's life.
Everything. You're like, we can't steal, Julie. I was like, let's take the Playboys. Take the Playboys.
You did take a Playboy. We left a couple bucks at the register, though, because I did feel bad about that. We'll get into your kleptomania in a future episode. I'm sure that'll come up at some point.
You pulled the principal. I would have called you Principal Meralda then. I would have been like, oh, Principal Meralda.
Got to go to an assembly. Do the right thing. So it was a great experience. We went on that experience, and I've talked about it on the podcast. On the drive home from there was such a moment for us. So two things happened on the drive home. One is, say it's like an hour and a half away from you and 2 hours away, something like that. And I was like, let's get in the car and not have a map, have any GPS. Let's just take turns and see where we go. We have nothing else to do today. Let's just explore and go on an adventure, which for me was something I had never really done in my life. Just kind of like, and we went up in some cool spots that day. We found places that we never would have found otherwise. We saw some things we never would have seen otherwise. It was just an experience where we're like, let's give this a shot. This might be cool. And we took all day to get home. It was awesome. The second thing.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. It
would have been like, that could have been a moment with a couple, right? With a new date that somebody could have been like, ugh, no, like, let's just get home.
Yeah. I need to go home and lay on the couch and watch Netflix.
So second thing
was, there was a moment where we talked about caves, and I was like, oh, I've been to a cave once or twice, and I love them. I think they're awesome. And we're driving home, and you're like, oh, let's stop. It's right here. Let's get off right here. And I was just like, nah, I don't want to do that. And the old me would have been like, all right, I'll go along with it. I really don't want to go, but okay, it's fine. I'll just do what you want to do. And I was just like, I felt so comfortable just being like, no, that's not what I want to do today. And you're like, all right, cool, no big deal. And
thank God he's decisive.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it was such a cool moment that I felt so comfortable with you that I was just like, this is me. If you don't like me, that like, I just wanted to just be me in front of you. And it was so easy to do that. And it's been so easy to do that. So thank you for that.
It was a refreshing thing
for
me as well, right? Like, it was the perfect storm, like in a good way, because your decisiveness was refreshing to me. You know, you don't want to be with somebody that's like, okay, I'm gonna do whatever. Whatever. You know, you want someone to be like, this is what we're gonna do, bitch.
Get me my chicken pot pie, bitch. No, we don't want that. That's not what I mean. That's not what we're about. It's not. So you said perfect storm, Julie. So when I think of perfect storm, I think of it can be the perfect storm in a way where it can be treacherous, or a perfect storm where it can be like, as you sit back and look at it, it can be beautiful. And I'll use this analogy that we heard from Bambi at the airport was, you just have to get to that 40,000 foot spot to be able to really see things from a different perspective. So first, talk to us about Bambi. What was going on with her, and what was her message to us at the airport?
Oh man, there's a lot going on there. So we're flying back from Florida on St. Patrick's Day, and we're at an airport bar. Of course, we're so many hours early. And it's St. Patrick's Day, right? So we have to have a green beer. So took us an hour to find a bar that we could sit at. And so we sit down, and to my left, I'm sitting to your left, and to my left is Bambi and her daughter, and to your right is, I don't know, some like maybe drug dealer kind of trafficking guy. Human
trafficking drug dealer, I would say. Yeah. That was on his business card.
So you engage with a conversation with him, and he's obviously has some kind of past masculine trauma in his life, so you're inspired and he's inspired by your mission. And meanwhile, I'm like, I don't know, we should even talk to that guy. Is he stealing my wallet out of my bag right now? And so that's happening. And to my left is Bambi, and Bambi is this amazing woman, right? I completely underestimated her initially, because I don't know, I had no idea that she was going to be a pilot. She is a pilot, and was there with her daughter, flying her daughter who had Down syndrome. It was her birthday, who was like 35 or something. I forget how old she was. Do you remember how old she was?
Yeah, she was in her 30s. It was like I think it might have been 35th birthday.
So that was amazing to me. She was there flying her daughter back to North Carolina. And so I started talking to Bambi because there's a TV on at the bar, and we're worried that there's going to be, a storm on our flight. So I bring that up to Bambi. I don't know she's a pilot at this time, and she's watching the TV as well. And I'm like, oh, we're going to hit a storm, and there's going to be turbulence. And my armpits are going to start sweating and I'm going to be nervous and oh God, you know. And she's like, oh no, that's fine. She's like, I'm a pilot and that storm is here. And once you get to 40,000 feet, you're good. You might hit some turbulence until you get to 40,000 feet. But once you're there, you're all good. You just get through it. It's not going to kill you, you know, but everyone freaks out during the turbulence. They think like, you know, they lose it. You just got to like hold on. And once you get there, everything will be clear. And I was like, that is such good life advice. Just like hold the hell on, like get through the turbulence and everything will make sense at some point. And yeah, she had no idea. I was like crying. This is fascinating. Do you have any idea what life advice you just... Yeah, so I'm like, I gotta tell Dan about this. I'm like, oh my God, the 40,000 feet. And then they're like, your flight is taking off. And we're like, crap,
what? Right.
Run. We gotta go. You're trying to tell me about like the sex trafficking drug dealer conversation. And I was like, Bambi. I was like, you
amazing. But yeah, he stole my identity, but he paid for lunch for us. He paid for our drinks.
A whole bar.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, it was probably I probably paid for it. He stole my wallet. But so now we're in the plane and we're 40,000 feet up there, and you're saying this is what an amazing conversation I just had. We're going to go through turbulence in life. It's inevitable. How do we feel about it? Are we so worried about the turbulence that we're going through, or do we recognize we just need to get to 40,000 feet and then you could look down on the clouds and see things from such a different perspective? So we get back from Florida, and the next episode that I did, which coincidentally enough is probably one of the last episodes that I did solo. Then I started doing the interviews, and Building Men just took a totally different trajectory from that point. But it was 5 life lessons that you learn from strangers. And that was one of the life lessons, was that, you know, the perspective from 40,000 feet. And I talk about Bambi, and I remember getting text messages from friends just, Bambi, question mark, question mark, question mark. Like, who the fuck was Bambi? Who the fuck is Bambi? What, you know? And listen, you picture Bambi in your head, what she looks like. That was not the Bambi that we saw at the airport.
No.
Nonetheless, she was like the wise old owl that, you know, that helped us understand a situation.
Yeah, she plopped right there in our world for a reason. And yeah, and I won't ever forget her, Bambi, or her name.
So speaking of owls, there were a couple other podcasts that you have influenced the naming of many of the podcasts based on conversations that we had. One of them was about an owl. It was the Owl in the Unlocked Cage. And so we were driving back from Delaware. I think it might have been one of the first or second times that I was down there with your family. And we were just talking about this idea of being stuck in your own mind, in your own world, where you feel like there's this cage around you, that you're there and you're in this cage and you can't fly out of it, when the either you have the key or the cage has been unlocked the entire time and you're able to fly and be free and be yourself. So that was a conversation that we had on the way back about this owl in the unlocked cage, and you helped me understand that I was kind of living as that owl for a long time in my life.
Yeah, that conversation resonated with you. It was like so clear to me. I'm like, you're like this wise, you know, old owl with the head the shape of a pineapple, and you know, you didn't realize your potential for whatever reason. You know, it felt like you, like you said, had the key. What's the song that you love? The Eagles?
It's already gone. Yeah.
Not by the Eagles.
It is by the Eagles, yeah.
It is by the Eagles.
By the band, not the football team that I despise. No, it's
I think it can't be the Eagles.
It is. I mean, imagine. That's going to be... I'll have a tattoo of that line somewhere on my body eventually, and it'll have to say by... Yeah. Right.
No, yeah, I was saying that people in general, right? They have this potential, and they, for some reason, whether it's like social constraints or, you know, like Buzzy the Bumblebee, right? Who is told he can't fly, but he can, and he believes it until he realizes he can fly or paddleboard. And then all of a sudden you're stuck. You're stuck, but it's kind of your own fault.
Right.
Because all you have to do is just go out and, realize that you have the key all along to make choices. It's all about choices. We wake up every day and it's everything. What am I going to drink? What am I going to do? What time am I going to wake up? And so you can expand that to your whole life. What path am I going to take? What am I going to do? How am I going to raise my kids? What am I going to show them? What kind of career path am I going to choose? What's everything? I mean, everything is a choice. So you can bring that back to, am I going to stay in this cage because it's something that has been socially written for me? Or am I going to be like, no, fuck that?
And we're so worried about what other people think about us and what we're supposed to do. Another episode that
because it's scary to fly. It's scary to fly out of the cage. Where are we going? It might be dark. We haven't really flown in a long time. So what if I can't fly? What if I fall? What if I trip on the way out and I get injured? And where am I going to land? I don't know where I'm going. So all of those things, they trap us, even though the door is open. The door is open for all of us, every single person. So why do people choose to stay behind that open door? It doesn't make any sense.
Right. It doesn't. And is it they're afraid of the unknown? That it's safer to be stuck in the cage because what the cage is like on the inside. All right, I hate it in here. There's shit all around me.
Right. It's why people like to stay in jail. It's Shawshank Redemption.
Yes.
He got out of jail and he killed himself because that is scary, right? So people, I guess, stay in those situations. So we always talk about it, right? What is that? Is it courage? Is it upbringing? Like, why can some people break free? I mean, you look at all the amazing men that you have interviewed, why have they prevailed, right? Like, what can cause them to evolve and rise above? What is it?
It's that nature versus nurture conversation. How much are people born with that kind of perseverance inside of them? Is that a characteristic that people have, that no matter what, some people are just going to, as the chips are down, they're going through something difficult, they're always going to be able to pick themselves up? Is it situational? Is it based on, okay, I've been beaten down, but there was someone there to help me out, or there was some situation that helped pull me up? Or is it a combination thereof? Is it, both the nature and the nurture play a part in it? I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is, but it's something that I'm so fascinated by, is when people go through the challenging situation and they feel that they're able to pick themselves up. And another episode that you had a large part in was the In Search of a Buoy in the Cold Dark Night. It's a conversation that we had as well. And we talked about buoys in people's lives. And when you're going through those challenging situations, sometimes you have it in yourself. Sometimes you'll always be able to find your way back to shore. But other people don't have that all the time. Sometimes they're kind of stranded out there and they need someone or something to be that light that will kind of help them understand, okay, this is a navigational spot I need to aim for, and they need that buoy to help them along the way. So it's another conversation that we had. I feel like I owe you some royalties or something, because there's at least 6 of the episodes that I've done that you, without a doubt, either had a huge part in or just outright named for me.
Royalties?
Is that what it's called? I owe you some kind of a compensation, financial compensation.
Just be you. It's enough for me. Yeah. No, I'm just happy. You know what? Just spreading goodness is all the royalty I need, really, for real. Right. But the buoys, and it could be anything, the buoy, like the Trenton guys, they were a buoy for you. Right? Like they were a buoy to you. You saw them and you something resonated within you and you were able to connect with them. So did the buoys pop up when we least expect them? We think that they're going to be these lighthouses that we're all looking for. No, when you're out there in the ocean, you don't know where the buoys are. You don't know exactly where they will be. The lighthouses, yeah, maybe, but not the buoys so much all the time.
It's so funny you mentioned that. It's the first time I saw it from that perspective, taking the 40,000 foot view. I felt at the time when I stopped to go talk to Kyle and the other guys in Trenton, I was doing something of service to other people that needed something. They definitely needed financial support. They needed material goods to help them out. They needed food. So I felt like I was providing a service. It made me feel good to feel like I was helping other people do it. And then being able to spread a message, hey, if there's anyone else around that can help them, that would be great. And, it's something that I got really emotional about after it happened. I went home and I immediately recorded a podcast. As soon as that was over, I was so emotional about that situation. I never looked at it from that perspective, that they were actually a buoy for me. They helped me understand, and I'll use like an Ian Lobos term, to dial in on what my mission was. I was so involved with thinking about so many different things. I needed to realize, like, this is what it's about. Like, you have an opportunity to do something to help another person. So they helped me realize that, because I just felt this overwhelming emotion in that situation. I never ever thought about it, that they helped me in that moment more than me helping them in that moment.
Yeah, they led you somewhere.
Yeah,
that's what they do. They lead you somewhere. So they were a buoy. So that's what people need to realize. The buoys are going to pop up, and we gotta see them for what they are and listen to them.
Because sometimes there'll be situations where, people find this broken piece of glass on a ship and throw it off into the water and say, fuck it, it's broken, I don't need that anymore. But Julie, what happens then?
Oh my God, it turns into, after how many years?
It's many, many years between, it's like 50 years, 70 years. Sea glass.
And then somebody else finds it, and I'm like, oh my God, I've been looking my whole life for this piece of sea glass. And it's been through storms, and it's been, tossed around, and people have overlooked it, have walked by it, kicked it away, and here it is. It's this perfect piece of sea glass that somebody has been looking for, and how lucky are they to have found it?
So that's a conversation we had as well. I was in like a homeless situation. I was living down at my sister's shore house in Lavalette on the shore. When my kids were down there with me, or you were down there with me, it was great. There was a lot going on. It was a beautiful area. But the times when I was alone, I was really, really alone. Nothing was going on there. But there was sea glass that was there. And I remember us having a conversation about it. And you were like, sea glass is such an amazing phenomenon. Like, everything that it goes through to wind up in a spot that someone can collect it. This piece of purple sea glass might have come from Indonesia. It could have come from anywhere, and it wound up on the beach here, and we were able to find it here. And it's gone through these trials and tribulations, and it was discarded and left for dead, and it wound its way up in someone's hand, and it's now seen as something beautiful. And that idea that you can take anything in life, can be discarded by someone else, and you can find it and say, you know what, this is a treasure to me.
Yeah. I'm a beach girl, so sea glass to me has been a huge deal. We have read about it, we have searched for it, we have combed the beaches for it, and so I've of course been fascinated by sea glass. So yeah, you were like my piece of sea glass that I found. Really, that's what I said, I think.
You did.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
So that was a little journey. The last one that we talked about too, that you had a big part in, as I just did a quick walk down memory lane of the podcast episodes, that you just had such an integral role in as we talked. It was just communication, and I'll bring it back to the initial thing, was just how we communicate. is in this really deep way, but also we can take anything and how can we make this work in a way that can help other people? And I believe that you are, I mean, one, you're the most amazing woman I've ever met before, but two, you just have this unique way of taking situations and like analogizing them to make it work in a really inspirational way. And it helped me, especially there were times during the podcast where I was just like, I don't have any ideas. I don't want to do it anymore. I can't figure out anything. And you're like, let's talk. And we would talk through some things. And all of a sudden I got this level of inspiration from you. So you've definitely played such a major role in the journey of building men. I could, pick out little moments and I was like, I remember this point in our relationship and then how it translated into me understanding something deeper about myself and about the world based on our conversations. And another one was the idea of fuck the white picket fence. That was
right.
That was another episode that we talked about. We were just talking about
my favorite. Yeah.
Society prescribes for us and we feel like we have to fit into this certain box and we need to have, this countertop and we have to have, the towels in the bathroom that match the fucking rug and, our toothbrushes need to look a certain way and our kids need to have their hair in a certain way. And like, are you kidding me? How much time do people waste on bullshit like that? None of it matters. And when we're placing value in these extrinsic things and not something that comes from within, we are wasting so much valuable time in our life caring about the line on our silverware. Is it too thick of a line on our silverware because that's not what so-and-so has down the street? Who cares?
I think people are so obsessed. They're so unhappy a lot of the time that they are hyper focused on things that they can control, and things like silverware and whatever, how your furniture is organized or the color of your cabinets and your countertops. And yeah, none of it matters.
It doesn't matter.
But people get caught up in that and they think that that's what matters.
And I'm lucky that you don't place value in those things, because I mean I'm usually a wreck. I mean I'm a mess half the time. You're like, we need to get you a new shirt or two. Listen, we need to get you. I had a phone that had so many cracks in it for such a long time. I was like, who cares? No big deal.
You're the most put together man I've ever met in my entire life. You are not a wreck. Your phone was a wreck.
My phone was a wreck. You're right.
Your phone was a wreck. But you're not a wreck.
I had some rough edges. You definitely helped me in many different ways. So thank you for that. I just wanted to, you'll definitely be back as a guest on the Building Men podcast for years to come. But I wanted your first visit on the podcast, one, to be the first female in the history.
I wore a peace shirt. I wore a sign with a peace sign. Can you see it? It's got a big.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great shirt.
I know it was a big deal.
You want to hear some serendipity right there? That is actually that same peace sign is the cover of an STP album.
This one?
Or not? It's on the CD. It's actually Shangri-La-Di-Da. It's that, but it's red. It's red, yellow, and orange, but the same exact thing. Shangri-La-Di-Da. That's the.
I was gonna wear an Eagle shirt, but I didn't want to.
The shortest interview in the history of Building Men. I would have started the interview and ended it immediately.
I didn't want to do that to you.
No, I wouldn't. No, and I would still do an interview. It would be a half-assed interview, though. It wouldn't.
Can I ask you a question?
Wow, that's a bold move right there. This is a bold.
What happens? I don't know what the podcast etiquette.
A bold turn of events here. This has only happened maybe once or twice in the history of Building Men, but listen, we're breaking down barriers right now. By all means, go ahead.
So, in your understanding of masculinity and your journey, podcast, and all the people that you've interviewed, what, if any, ideas or thoughts have you incorporated into how you define masculinity? Have you taken on after interviewing and meeting all the amazing men that you have, they have helped me define masculinity? How have they helped you define masculinity?
That's a great question. I appreciate that. One of the people that have helped me the most, I would say, is one of my recent guests was Angelo Cisco. I loved his definition of masculinity, and
I wrote it down.
Yeah, it was to
Live
love,
a life of
to
integrity,
teach, to live a life of integrity, by loving, by teaching, and by protecting, or by serving.
and that's funny because I wrote the same thing down, and I wrote live a life of integrity while being in touch with my feelings and aligned with my heart. Okay, so Cisco.
What he said was, being a man is you're showing your masculinity by loving, by teaching, and by serving. That idea, those three things wrapped into my idea of masculinity. I think there needs to be a level of authenticity where you're not afraid to just be who you are. And I feel like I did not live in my true self, like in my masculine self for a long time, because I was really worried about what people thought about me for such a long time. I mean, obviously you don't want to walk around with shit hanging out of your nose or whatever, but like I was so worried about what. Thank God you did that. It's like I was trying to give you nonverbal cues that you had a boogie this entire time. No, no, it was to be your authentic self, to feel comfortable enough to feel vulnerable while being strong, serving and protecting, doing all of those things. So it's like those 5 things working almost as a Venn diagram, and in the middle of authenticity, vulnerability, like loving relationship wise, being a mentor and being a teacher, a coach, and then also serving and protecting. Those things all kind of swirling in together, and that center is the sweet spot of masculinity. That's my best definition right now.
Yeah, it's evolving.
It's evolving, right? And it's that balance. It's that balance, because we know men that are really, really strong, they provide, they protect, but then when, there needs to be that emotional connection where they need someone to just be like, I am here. Listen. I will listen to you. I will put my arms around you. I'm going to help you, and also be vulnerable. I can show you what's on the inside of me. I'm okay with breaking down and crying when things are not like I'm overwhelmed with emotion. I don't need to bottle it up. I can just show who I am, my true self. And I think that's where people get stuck a lot of times. Or the pendulum swings so far in one direction or the other. It's finding that middle ground, that sweet spot.
Expression, right? Like Ian DeMello, that was a huge moment for me. Like that's a huge masculine, it should be incorporated in masculinity. The courage to express
right
your emotions, however you want to do that.
Express anything. Express, your emotion. My brother comes on the podcast and he's wearing a fucking suspenders and nipple rings, and I'm like, he's expressing himself. It's like he's finding a way to express himself. No one knew that was there, but
Mel just watched, my good friend Melanie, of course, we just watched The White Coat with your dad, The White Blazer, the clip, and she was like, I'm sorry, I cannot focus on anything. Is he in a leather vest? Is his nipple showing? She was like, I can't focus on anything. She was so hyper focused on Anthony's outfit, which was, yeah. So hey, however you want to express yourself, and that's a masculine, right? You're gonna wear a pink shirt with red-headed woodpeckers on it. You go on with your bad self. That's a
good segue. That's Tuesday's episode. Norman Lloyd Kinsey III. Go and see my pink red-headed woodpecker shirt.
Perfect.
Do you have any other questions for me, Julie Verona? That was a great question. I love that you asked that, and I appreciate you taking that risk. I also wanted to say, but I just don't want to miss the opportunity to call myself out. When we talked about the sea glass, I texted you and I said, I'm going to. This is what I want to talk about, sea glass. Like, this is what I'm thinking. It's about perseverance, about resiliency. It's about being discarded and, going through these difficult times and coming back stronger, more beautiful, better version of yourself. I said, what should I call it? And you typed in EPITOME. And that word is epitome, right? In my mind, that epitome was spelled with a Y. And I said, okay, well, maybe Julie's enlightened in a way where epitome is that's the better way to say it right now. So I recorded that episode, and if you go back and listen, I think it's like episode 29 or 30 or something. I come on, and that was when I was still doing podcast the old way. I come on and say, saying Seaglass, the epitome of perseverance.
Oh my God, you didn't say that.
Yeah, and then I did it, and I published it. And then you were like epitome, and I was like, no, epitome. You're like, it's not a word. Epitome is not a word. It's epitome. So I left it there. I was like, fuck it. And it'll be a good thing to talk about one day in the future. And that day is.
Should I tell him? I gotta tell him.
So bad. Listen, what a great moment though. It's one of those things that, I'll look back with a lot of good feelings around that moment, because I was like, I could have like perseverated over it and been worried about it, or it could be a funny thing that I said epitome instead of epitome. So that was another fun moment.
Full force forward.
Full force forward. I've said that many times. That is a Bill Verona-ism. And I appreciate you, Julie Verona, for being on the Building Men podcast, the first female guest in the history of this long-standing show that's almost 1 year old. Well, by the time this is published, this will be season 2. This will be we'll call this the first episode of season 2 on Building Men. It'll publish in July, but it'll be the first official episode of season 2. We're in a new chapter here. We're going to be interviewing. We'll have some women on the show. Why not? And maybe join me and have, you could be like a co-host interviewing some women as well from your perspective.
Right. Yeah. And then.
So.
Thank you.
What's that?
You said it was an honor to be asked to be on here, and thank you.
Like, you did a wonderful job, and you looked stunning as well. Thank you for not wearing the eagle shirt.
You're welcome.
Is there anything you would like to promote?
Gosh. I want to promote you.
Thank you.
Where can we find you?
Well, so you can find Building Men. It's building.men on Instagram. On Instagram, there's a link tree that you can go and find all this stuff. Building Men Podcast is Facebook. Email is buildingmencoach@gmail.com. We just started, my brother Anthony and I started offering free discovery calls if you need help in a specific area. And that's on Calendly. And it's Calendly, and it's / Dennis Meralda, I believe. It's on we'll put a link in the podcast notes as well. And we're on YouTube, which is a cool thing. And this will be one of the last episodes before Anthony and I are in the studio actually doing some cool stuff in the studio. So it's a lot of cool stuff happening on Building Men. We have a couple sponsors that we'll be sharing with you as well. A lot of big announcements. It's good stuff happening on Building Men. And we're into season 2 when this episode is being released. So it's awesome stuff.
Anyone has labor and delivery questions, feel free to contact me. You can find my information from Dennis.
Sure thing. We can put a link to labor and delivery questions, and this will springboard, I believe, into you having, either working in a way where we're talking to people, or maybe people are just going to you for advice on different things, because you are a wealth of knowledge, inspiration, and advice. Like I mentioned, you are definitely a coach, a counselor, relationship expert, and I feel blessed to know you, have you in my life, and I love you, Julie. So thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on Building Men.